My name is Natalie Levine, and I interviewed Gloria Lewis, and she was a child who participated in the Children's March to demonstrate how she wanted her freedom. She was African American, and it was during the Civil Rights Movement. And she basically just told me her experience and how she felt about the Children's March.
This Children's March was in Birmingham, correct?
Yes.
Yes. And what surprised you the most from your research about what you found out?
Well, I knew that there was violence, but I didn't realize how violent they would be against children. Because you don't expect them to do the same thing with adults and children, and they were just as violent, and that really surprised me.
What kinds of skills did you have to use in order to get the information in the interview?
Well, there wasn't a lot of internet information, so I had to read a lot of books, and there weren't a lot of books that discussed the topic either. So I basically had a movie that I referred to and a book for all my research.
What skills did you learn when you did this project?
Well, I learned a lot about time management because no other school project requires this much work. And you have to balance all your other classes with this project.
Was this frustrating at first?
Yeah, it was frustrating because you have to find an interview, and that can be difficult. I didn't have a really bad time with that, but it took me a little while to find her, and then also the research can be kind of difficult.
On the other side, what was the most rewarding part about doing this?
I think the most rewarding part was her reaction to my project because I sent it to her and she contacted me and was very proud and surprised in how the video turned out.
So how did she feel when she was finished with the project as compared to how you were feeling?
She was very proud and didn't actually, when I explained to her what the project was, she didn't really understand what it was. And then when she saw it, she was very surprised, and she still contacts me and sends me videos and stuff.
Did you send this project anywhere to be put into an archive?
No, I just sent it to her.
Do you think you might?
I don't know, maybe.
When you think back on it years and years and years from now, what do you think you'll remember?
I think I'll remember the extreme violence that was used against them, because no one actually knows how extreme it was until you hear how, somebody who went through it.
What lesson in life did you learn from that, do you think?
I think I learned not to judge people, because you never know exactly how things are for them.
And how about that advice for the new 8th graders coming in?
I think time management is the most important thing, because if you don't manage your time, you're never going to finish, and it's not going to turn out well.
So be organized. Huh?
Mm-hmm.
Well, it sounds like you really enjoyed the art history experience, correct?
Mm-hmm. It was very stressful, though.
Yeah. But worth it.
Yeah.
Yeah. Okay. Thank you so much for sharing.
Thank you.
Can you give us your full name, please?
Emily Linhard.
And I'd like you to share a very short summary of what you did with your oral history experience.
I researched the Great Depression, and I interviewed my great Aunt Sally, and I also interviewed her best friend Roberta, and I just briefly talked to them about their experience in the Great Depression, their family life, their education, things they just did because they were kids, just kids in the Great Depression.
What did you learn as far as research skills?
I learned a lot about the Great Depression and how it impacted the families, and I also learned a lot more about my family because I didn't really know my Aunt Sally that well, and I learned a lot more about her and my family by interviewing her.
And what else did you learn besides just research skills in this kind of work that you did?
Do you mean research skills?
Anything. Anything else beyond just the history aspects?
I learned a lot about researching and just tips helping me that will help me a lot more in school to come with research projects like this.
How about technology?
I also did learn a lot about technology through this project. I got to play around more with Windows Live Movie Maker and just all that, and learned a lot more about the programs like that. Yeah.
How was this different from the normal type of school assignment
It was definitely more time consuming because it did take all year, and it was a lot more broad than most projects. Like, I had a lot more freedom in the project, and I could do whatever I wanted in terms of my topic, how I wanted to format my project and stuff like that.
Well, you're now already in high school. In years to come, what will you remember about this project?
Well, I will always remember the family aspect that I learned from this, but I will also remember like the skills I've learned from doing this project and all of the like research skills and the technology skills that I've learned with this project.
Has it helped you in high school?
Yeah, I think so. I think it's definitely made me more like productive, I guess I could say. It's like helped me research and just like be more thorough with my research.
What advice would you have for new 8th grade students coming into this project? What would you tell them?
I would definitely say the one thing that helped me a lot was beginning with the end in mind. Like, think through your whole project before you start and think about who you're going to contact, and also making contacts as early as possible, and also sticking with the schedule that's given to you, because that helped a lot.
Anything else you'd like to add?
It was a fun project for me, and I really enjoyed it, and I was glad I got the opportunity to do it.
Thank you. Missy, can you give us your full name, please?
Missy Masechko.
And in a very short summary, can you summarize your oral history experience, the theme that you did?
The theme was animal abuse and cruelty and neglect throughout the world. I interviewed Whitney Kalk. She is the assistant manager of youth marketing at PETA, which means she basically controls PETA 2's website content and deals with youth projects such as oral history. I researched different animal advocate websites to further enhance my understanding of the topic. I already know some information, but I needed to know more in order to create the actual presentation and make it enough accuracy to have it be both viewpoints from animal advocates who hate the idea of animals being used for us to eat, to wear, to entertain, but also to give the animals a voice so that we can better give people a sense of what they're going through.
So you're like the Lorax of the trees, you're the voice for the animals, is that correct?
Yes, you could say that. I just wanted to get the point out there because I'm a true animal lover. I hate the idea of animals being treated inhumanely. You hear about a lot of domestic violence in households and families, but people don't really pay attention to the animal cruelty out there, and there's so much that people don't know that is happening in the world. There's slaughterhouses where, in like vacant housewares, and there are just animal abuse everywhere, and people just don't know that. So I try to give that a sense, give people a sense of what's happening throughout the world when they don't know it.
What skills did you learn throughout this project?
I learned to be a pretty good historian. I had to set aside my feelings towards the topic. I know everyone has their viewpoints, but I had to set that aside to really find out the accurate and truth through biased websites, because when animal advocate websites have their content, they may put some bias words into it to make it more inhumane and make it sound extremely inhumane than it maybe would be. But I had to just gather up all that information, and I had to research about circuses, because circuses, they treat their animals very inhumanely behind the scenes, but the audience don't know that because all they see is amazing performances tigers jumping through fire hoops, but they don't know the cruelty that is going behind the scenes. So I learned to basically take that information and make it so that it's objective, not really biased, but I also wanted to make it moving. So I did add a few moving words that will enhance the understanding for the audience.
How was the oral history experience different from most other projects and assignments you've gotten in school?
Well, for one thing, you actually got to pick your topic. And it all starts with the beginning. You have to be intrigued by the topic. If you aren't interested in it, then it won't really motivate you to really go beyond your certain limits to find information that would definitely be useful for your presentation. And for school assignments, they are usually enhancing one learning aspect for students, but oral history gathers all those skills. You have to investigate different websites. You have to find the accurate content that will make it plausible. You have to analyze that content so it fits with your topic, and it has to be relevant, of course. And then you have to conclude everything so that it makes it into the presentation, so everything fits together like a puzzle piece.
Mm-hmm.
What piece of advice would you give to new 8th graders coming in?
My number one key is perseverance. Obviously, you would need that to continue on the presentation, but with me, I actually got my interview late in March, which is just when you're working on the videos, and without my perseverance, I could not have gotten my interview because my interviewee was out of town or she changed her number, but I had to keep reviewing the different numbers. I had to keep emailing her and keep reminding her that, oh, we scheduled an interview. Will you be able to do it? Will you not? Could we reschedule another time? You definitely need perseverance, and you need to be persistent in order to get all the information you need. You need to find the content for the development. You have to take the development and the interview and pile it all together in this presentation, and then you have to work your butt off to get that presentation amazing. You have to get pictures and videos to help the audience better understand. Pictures and videos, visuals is like the key thing, really. It gets them really paying attention. And then music. Music's also a good key thing too, because it sets the mood. In every movie, you hear like suspenseful music, and you think something's gonna happen. And if you hear the sad music, then you know it's serious, and you shouldn't giggle. In my presentation, I used a lot of sad music so that I had to get the audience notice that they need to be serious at this time, that this isn't something to joke about. And it's not. It's very awful, and it's sad, and I mean, you should get emotional if you watch some of the presentations, because these are horrible things that happen in history, and most people don't realize the actual key events that happen, and that it impacts everything in the world.
How long ago did you do your project?
I'm going to 11th grade, so 3 years, basically.
Sounds like you're going to be an advocate for this topic for a long time.
Oh yes. I may be looking into spending a job at PETA or an animal shelter or something basic like that, just to help animals in need. I'm sort of their voice.
Well, you obviously believe in the topic, and you learned a lot from the oral history experience. I thank you very much for sharing your comments.
Thank you.
Can you please state your name?
Anna Marie Scarf.
And how long ago did you do your oral history experience?
I did my oral history project 5 years ago in 2009. I did my project on Watergate, specifically focusing on the cover-up and the impact that President Nixon's tapes had on the cover-up.
Can you tell us what kinds of research and other kinds of skills you learned from this oral history experience?
I think the biggest thing that I learned was time management, because this project was huge. There was no way to really cut corners and do this well at all. We spent, I'd say, about 2 months just doing solid research. I used mainly internet sources, but we spent so much time in class, in the library, doing research for this. I think my outline was around 10 or 12 pages, single-spaced. Just so much thought and so much time and dedication went into this project that I really had to learn how to really space out my time and know that I need this much time to do this research and this much time to actually compile everything into the presentation. So that was huge. And then another skill that I learned was just to, not necessarily a skill, but more of a mindset of learning to just kind of let things happen even if they don't work out the way that I expect them to. Because I initially went into this project knowing that I wanted to interview 2 people from both sides of the issue of Watergate. And after spending about a month or so trying to phone call, fax, email them, nobody was responding, and that's 2 people, and I was hoping to at least get one of them. And by the time April rolled around, people were already having their interviews, or at least had them solidly scheduled, and I had nobody. I had to start from square one again, which was scary, but it all worked out because my aunt mentioned that someone she was familiar with, she lives in Raleigh, North Carolina, she just kind of mentioned in passing, this guy who lives in Raleigh, he, I think, was involved in Watergate. So I looked him up and he was perfect for my project. And it worked out. I did my interview 3 weeks before my presentation was due. It was really scary, but it all worked out and everything happened for a reason. And I'm so glad that I got this interview instead of the others because it worked out better than I could have imagined. So roll with the punches, basically.
You are now in college, is that correct?
Yes,
Where?
I'm at Villanova University. I am a rising sophomore. I was actually abroad my spring semester of my freshman year. I was in Singapore, which was amazing. It was such an amazing experience. It was a program in the business school at Villanova where freshmen could go to Singapore, take classes, and actually have an internship full-time. And so I worked in an accounting firm full-time while I was there, and it was the best experience I could have asked for. It was so amazing.
Now, were you able to translate any of the learning skills that you had from this project into what you're doing now?
A little bit, yes. Especially the interview aspect. For my internship, I had to complete interviews, and then I also had to speak with clients and ask a lot of questions. So being able to relate to people and I needed to come in knowing what I was talking about, ready to go. And I knew how to do the research because of this project that could really make me ready for these interviews and ready to talk to these clients. And I felt much more confident after that. So it was really helpful.
Years and years and years from now, what will you remember about this oral history experience?
I think I'll remember that, the primary sources are the most important, and that you can't learn everything from a textbook. Real life experience and hearing people's stories is really the way to get the best information. My interviewee, Mr. Edmiston in particular, I knew going in kind of what he would say because I knew who he was and I had done my research and I knew a lot about Watergate, but he still managed to surprise me. I guess going a little bit into Watergate, President Nixon had this taping system in the Oval Office where it recorded all conversations, all phone calls, but no one knew if this actually existed or not. It was kind of a rumor. But this man, Alexander Butterfield, who was what my interviewee called an executive housekeeper, he was just there he was just being interviewed for just kind of names and just kind of housekeeping stuff. And one of the people in the Senate Watergate Committee just happened to ask Mr. Butterfield, is there a taping system in the White House? And he said, yes, it's in the Oval Office, it's on all the time. And that was huge for the Senate Watergate Committee, this piece of information. And my interview with Mr. Edmiston was actually the one who personally delivered the subpoena to President Nixon, which I didn't know this. And just watching him kind of go back in time and relive these memories, it was just amazing. And I had no idea that this was how the tapes were discovered, that it was just kind of a fluke. I never knew that, and I never would have known that if he hadn't shared that with me. And just the emotion behind his voice, because he was, I think, I want to say late 20s, early 30s, like fresh out of law school, and just so caught up in this, and I could see it in his face and hear it in his voice when he was talking to me. So I'll never forget that. It was amazing to hear.
Do you look at history in a different way than you did before this project?
I do. I now see more that there's so many different sides to the story. No matter who you talk to, if they were in the same room at the same time, you'll get a different version of events. And so just because something is written down in an article or on paper as this is what happened, there's always different sides to it. Little things that maybe someone else picked up, or something that meant more to someone else that's equally as important. That it's important to look at all different sources and all different things, because history is not set in stone. There's so many different sides to the story, which I found fascinating with Watergate, especially because that topic in particular is such a mystery. So it was really interesting to see it kind of unfold.
Well, very well stated, and
Thank
I
you.
wish you well in your college endeavors, and thank you so much.
Thank you.
Will you please state your name?
My name is Marina Curry, and I interviewed William Mullen, and he was a CH-37 pilot in Vietnam War.
What did you learn from this interview?
I learned the true struggle of a soldier in Vietnam, because I didn't really know what it was like over there. I mean, I did my research, but it wasn't in like a first-person perspective. It was just the basic information. And when I talked to him on the phone, he said all this stuff, and I had no idea about where he lived and when he was traveling to where he trained. I had no idea about any of this stuff, like the conditions. Like, they were such poor conditions that they had to go through, even when he was there. But yeah.
Wow. Was there one piece of information that was the aha piece of information, something that really will stick with you for a long, long time?
For me, it was probably my conclusion and how I chose to use the question, how were you treated when you arrived back in America, for my concluding question, because I knew that would be very emotional for him, I guess, and I felt like that would be a good place to end on, because in my interview, he said that he was never welcomed home because there was a lot of conflict and a lot of people weren't happy that that the soldiers were there in the first place. So he was never welcomed home, and they just felt like the soldiers felt like they weren't appreciated.
What were the most significant skills that you learned through this oral history experience?
I got a lot of experience with interview skills and computer skills, because I used iMovie instead of Movie Maker, and we use Movie Maker in school, and I really didn't know what to do, so my sister had to help me for most of the how to actually insert audio and stuff, and it was just really it was really different from anything that we've ever done in school before, because we usually use Movie Maker in school, but this was out of school. Most of it was out of school. Yeah.
What was different about this assignment as compared to other assignments? And you just recently completed this, is that correct?
Yeah,
Okay.
just last year. It was very different because of how long-term it was and of all the steps leading up to it. I've never had any projects in school that had so many steps leading up to it. It was the most long-term, people presented. It started near the beginning of the year, and people presented, my friend presented on the last day of school. So, yeah, because she couldn't get hers in, I think she might have been, absent or something, but yeah. It was very long term. Yeah.
years and years and years from now, what we remember most about doing this oral history?
Probably my first interview, because I had to listen to it so many times for like to clip out the audio, and it was in it with it since it was a phone recording. It was extremely awkward. Like I read it, I heard it so many times, and I'm just like, why did I have to say that? Because I said so many times. After everything he answered, there was like a 3-second silence, and then I was just like, okay, so next question. It was so awkward. I'm really glad that I got this experience, because it'll help me a lot for interviews to come and for future school projects.
Do you still keep in contact with your interviewee?
Yes, actually. I have a story that was printed in the newspaper about him, and he earned a medal for saving civilians. And also, I have a picture of him next to one of the helicopters that he flew, and well, he did this after, so I couldn't really show it to anybody in my class, so because it took a little while to send.
Yeah.
But yeah. Yeah. Sorry.
That's right. When you give advice to new 8th graders coming in, what would you tell them? Always do this.
Start the research outlines ahead of time. Start them before all your friends are starting it. Like, if your friends say, oh, I haven't started mine yet, don't think that it's like okay that you haven't started it. Like, you can do whatever you want, but just, it's a good piece of advice to start it ahead of time. Because if you start some of it, like most of mine I started like half of it, but then like near like the last few days I was like, wow, I really need to fix this. And then it was just the first ones were very hard to do, because it was the first research outline like that I've ever did. So, yeah.
Sounds like it was very challenging, but very
It was.
memorable.
Yeah, it was very rewarding too, because the experience that I got from this project will help me will stay with me for the rest of my high school experience and college, I hope, experience, because I'm not really sure what I'll even do in college, but I think that what I learned from this project will definitely help me.
Thank you so much for sharing.
Thank you.
Name?
I'm Hannah Krebs, and I interviewed Joe Topea. He's a writer, historian, and filmmaker, and he lives in Baltimore City. So he wrote a movie called Hit and Stay that included several interviews with Camden 28 members, which is the topic that I interviewed him for. They were members of the Catholic Left, which was an anti-Vietnam War protest group, which involved the Catholics. So he wrote a film about not only the Camden 28, but also the Catonsville 9, which was Phil Berrigan, who was also a big protester.
How much time did you spend researching this? It must have been a good deal of research to provide the interview questions.
Yeah, it was. It's a 6-month process, and I used basically all 6 months. So.
What was the one single piece of research that you thought was the most significant that you came up with?
Probably the fact that a member of the Camden 28, Bob Hardy, actually betrayed his own group and told the FBI about them.
Did that surprise you?
Yeah, I did. I didn't think that it was actually a member of their own group. That's really surprising.
And how did you frame that in your presentation?
I did a whole series of pictures, and then I did a bunch of paragraphs on the slides about how he turned them into the FBI, and I included Ohio, the music, the song from the 70s in that verse.
So you used multidisciplinary kinds of things to show the whole story.
Mhm.
Very good. What skills do you learn and you felt like you really came away with after this project?
Basically how to use Movie Maker, because I've never done that before and I figured it out all by myself. I basically just tested it out and figured it out. It took me a really long time, but I eventually figured it out. And once I got the presentation done, it felt really good, and I enjoyed doing the whole process, actually. It was a fun topic.
Years and years and years from now, what will you remember about this oral history experience?
One, how long it took. Really took a long time. And also, I enjoyed going out into like a different part of the city, like the artsier side of the city with like painters and then and also musicians, film directors, had all different kinds of artists, and that was interesting.
What piece of advice would you give to your fellow students coming in, starting this project?
Well, you need to manage your time very well. It's all about time management, and if you wait until the last second to do everything, then you're going to be not only frustrated, but also you're not going to do as good of a job because you all have to rush at doing this, and you won't take your time and make sure that it's all correct.
Sounds like you put a huge amount of time and effort into this. Was it worth it?
Yeah, it was. I feel like it was worth it because I enjoyed doing it. And I had to check the presentation like 20 times probably to make sure it was correct. And even after the presentation, he said, Mr. DiFilippo said that I spelled one word wrong, so I had to fix that too. So I fixed it now. Yeah.
Perfection is wonderful, isn't it?
It feels good.
Thank you so much for sharing your experience.
Thank you.